The chandelier lights of the Grand Astoria Hotel sparkled overhead like 1,000 unblinking eyes, each crystal prism silently judging every move, every whisper exchanged beneath them. I smoothed down the front of my designer gown, a dress I'd spent too much on for validation from people I was beginning to question, and watched as my so-called elite friends lounged across the room. Their laughter cut through the ambient orchestra music, sharp as glass. When I arrived with Tyler beside me, their gazes slid toward us like knives. To them, he was a blemish on their carefully polished image. To me, he was becoming so much more. A soul worth saving, a boy worth fighting for. I still remember the moment everything changed. The exact second when wealth and status revealed their true, ugly face. It's burned into my memory like a brand. Tyler clutching his only possession, a torn photograph of a tired but beautiful young woman, his birth mother. He held it as though it were oxygen itself, and when it slipped from his trembling fingers during the gala, the entire room seemed to pause. I bent to retrieve it, my voice carrying louder than I intended. This is all he has left of her. This is the woman he still dreams of finding. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few rolled their eyes. But then it happened. Richard Aldridge, the most powerful investor in the room, turned deathly pale. His champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered against the marble. His lips trembled, his eyes widened in disbelief. And then, in a whisper that somehow cut through the silence, he said, "Oh my God, I know her." The room froze. In that instant, I realized this torn photograph, this fragile boy they mocked, held a secret that could destroy a millionaire empire. And now that secret was in my hands. This is the story of how I learned that true wealth has nothing to do with what hangs in your closet or who knows your name. It's about what you're willing to stand for when the world tells you to sit down. You're really going through with this fostering thing? Vanessa tilted her sunglasses down, her perfectly manicured eyebrows arching in disbelief. Madison, sweetie, you can donate to children's charities. You don't actually have to bring one home. The rooftop brunch at the peninsula was in full swing. Manhattan stretched before us, a glittering testament to ambition and wealth, while mimosas flowed freely and conversations buzzed with gossip and social climbing. This had been my world for the past 6 years. Beautiful people with ugly thoughts, disguised behind designer labels and charity galas. He's not a stray puppy, Vanessa. I stabbed at my avocado toast, suddenly not hungry. He's a 16-year-old boy who's been through 7 foster homes in 4 years. Olivia Harrington, my other friend since PR school, let out an exaggerated sigh. And you think you, Madison Hale, who can barely keep a houseplant alive, are going to be the miracle this troubled teen needs? She exchanged knowing glances with Vanessa. Let's be realistic. This will end in disaster, and your apartment will probably be robbed. Tyler is not a criminal, I said, my voice sharper than intended. He's a kid who never had a fair chance. Oh, it has a name already, Vanessa smirked, her voice dripping with condescension. Just wait until he meets the Prescott-Hamilton crowd at the Astoria Gala next month. They'll eat him alive. And you, Olivia added, leaning in conspiratorially. You're ruining yourself, Madison. A foster kid will stain your image. You've worked so hard to be accepted in these circles. I looked at them both. These women I'd spent years trying to impress, to be like. Their perfect blowouts, their strategic relationships, their casual cruelty. When had I started measuring my worth by their approval? Maybe my image could use some staining, I said quietly. The truth was, I'd been feeling hollow for months. My PR firm represented the wealthiest clients in New York, and I was good at my job, spinning narratives, shaping perceptions, building facades. But lately, I'd started to wonder if I was just as manufactured as the stories I crafted for others. The decision to foster hadn't been impulsive. After my mother died last year, the woman who had raised me alone after my father abandoned us, something fundamental had shifted inside me. Mom had always taught me that we find our purpose by giving, not taking. Somehow, along the way, I'd forgotten that. The social worker, Janet, had shown me Tyler's file 3 weeks ago. He's running out of options, she'd said bluntly. He's not a bad kid, but he's been shuffled around so much he doesn't trust anyone anymore. His last hope is a one-on-one placement with someone willing to really see him. His eyes in the photograph had haunted me, defiant but wounded. I recognized something in them, the same look I'd had after Dad left, when Mom and I were suddenly less than in our affluent community. I'll pick him up Friday, I told Janet, surprising even myself. Now, sitting across from Vanessa and Olivia, I realized I'd have to choose. their shallow acceptance or actually doing something meaningful with my life. Ladies, I have to run. I placed cash on the table, gathering my purse. I need to get Tyler's room ready before he arrives tomorrow. Madison, Olivia called as I stood to leave, her voice suddenly serious. You know what will happen. Your invitations will slow down. The connections I've helped you make will cool. Is some random kid really worth it? I paused, looking out over the city. I guess I'll find out. The next day, I stood nervously in the Stark government building where children's futures were shuffled like paperwork. When Tyler walked in, he looked nothing like his photograph. He was taller than I expected, lanky with hidden strength, his dark hair falling over eyes that seemed to catalog every exit. He carried nothing but a worn backpack and a permanent wariness. Hi, Tyler, I said, extending my hand. I'm Madison. He didn't take it, just nodded slightly. How long? How long what? How long before you send me back? His voice was flat, matter of fact. Not angry, just resigned. Janet, the social worker, gave me an apologetic look. Tyler, we've talked about this. Madison has committed to— Everyone commits at first, he interrupted, finally meeting my eyes. Then they realize fostering isn't a weekend volunteer project. The bluntness startled me, but I respected it. Fair enough. I don't know what's going to happen, Tyler. I've never done this before, and I'll probably mess up sometimes, but I promise you this. I won't lie to you, and I won't give up easily. Something flickered across his face. Not trust, but perhaps the smallest willingness to see what happened next. The drive to my Upper East Side apartment was quiet. I'd cleared out my home office, painted it blue, and filled it with a new bed, desk, and bookshelves. When I showed it to him, he set his backpack down carefully, looking uncomfortable with the newness of everything. You can change anything you don't like, I offered. It's your space now. He nodded, still saying nothing, but I noticed how he gently touched the desk, as if testing whether it was real. That night, I heard him pacing in his room, unable to sleep. I knocked softly, offering hot chocolate. To my surprise, he accepted, following me to the kitchen where we sat in awkward silence until he pulled something from his pocket. A torn photograph of a young woman with his eyes and, smile. My mom, he said simply, smoothing the creased paper. Before everything went bad. I didn't ask what everything meant. There would be time for that. Instead, I just nodded. She's beautiful. You have her eyes. Something in him softened, just for a moment. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. I didn't realize then how that torn photograph would change everything. Not just for Tyler and me, but for people whose power had always seemed untouchable. I didn't know that within weeks, the elite world I'd worked so hard to join would reveal its rotten core, or that I would have to choose between the acceptance I'd craved and the integrity I'd forgotten I had. All I knew was that for the first time in years, I'd made a decision that felt right, regardless of what my so-called friends might think. And somehow that was enough for now. The first few weeks with Tyler felt like navigating a minefield while blindfolded. He woke before dawn, as if he couldn't quite believe the room was still his. He ate quickly, shoulders hunched protectively over his plate, habits formed from years of instability. Our conversations were brief, his answers clipped, but gradually, tiny changes emerged. He started helping with dishes without being asked. He left a book about astronomy on the coffee table, a silent indication of interest. When I brought home a telescope I'd found at a second-hand shop, he didn't say thank you. But that night I noticed him on the balcony pointing it skyward, his face momentarily unguarded. Progress came in fragments, in moments when he would forget to maintain his walls. Like when he discovered I kept emergency chocolate in the freezer. Smart, he'd commented, almost smiling. Or when he reluctantly admitted he was good at math. It makes sense, unlike people. Then came the first real test of our fragile arrangement. A charity luncheon I couldn't skip. My PR firm represented 3 of the major donors, and my absence would be career suicide. I'll be fine here, Tyler insisted when I suggested bringing him. I'm used to being alone. Those 5 words twisted something inside me. I know you are, but you shouldn't have to be. He studied me, trying to decode my motives. Why do you care? I considered various polished responses but opted for the truth. Because someone should have. Long before now. He came to the luncheon. I bought him new clothes, nothing flashy, just a simple button-down and khakis that fit properly. He fidgeted with the collar the entire car ride, looking like he was being transported to his execution. These people, I explained, they care a lot about appearances, but underneath they're just people. Some good, some not. Try to remember that. Why do you hang out with them if they're not good? He asked, his perception uncomfortably direct. I had no adequate answer. The restaurant's private room buzzed with the usual crowd. Vanessa holding court near the windows, Olivia networking with calculated precision, various socialites and business leaders performing their carefully choreographed social dance. Conversations paused when we entered, resuming with heightened whispers. Tyler noticed. Of course he did. Years of being unwanted had given him radar for rejection. His posture stiffened, but he kept his chin up. A small act of defiance that made me prouder than I could explain. Madison, darling. Olivia air-kissed my cheeks. And this must be your project. Her eyes flicked dismissively over Tyler. How charitable of you. Before I could respond, Vanessa joined us, champagne in hand. Maddie's always had a bleeding heart. Remember the time she insisted we donate our gala centerpieces to that dreary nursing home? She laughed, as if compassion were a punchline. Tyler, these are my colleagues, Vanessa and Olivia, I said, emphasizing colleagues rather than friends. Nice to meet you, he said with surprising politeness, though I noticed how his hand went to his pocket, where he kept his mother's photo, his touchstone. So, Tyler? Vanessa tilted her head with exaggerated interest. What's your story? Madison's been frustratingly vague. Not much to tell, he answered, his voice neutral but eyes wary. Oh, everyone has a story, she pressed. Parents? Previous situations? I intervened. We should find our seats. The program's starting soon. As we moved toward our table, Olivia's stage whisper carried deliberately. I give it a month before her charity case steals her jewelry and disappears. Tyler's shoulders tensed, but he said nothing. Throughout lunch, I watched him navigate the subtle cruelties of my social circle. The pointed questions about his background, the exaggerated surprise when he demonstrated basic manners, the conversations deliberately filled with references he couldn't understand. He handled it with quiet dignity that shamed me. Who were these people I'd tried so hard to impress? And what did it say about me that I'd valued their approval? Later that night, I found Tyler on the balcony again, stargazing. I'm sorry about today, I said, joining him. Not your fault. Still, those people are your friends? He finished. I get it. No, I said firmly. They're not. Not really. I hesitated. But I've spent years pretending they were, which might be worse. He was quiet for a long moment. Why? Such a simple question with such a complicated answer. When I was growing up, my dad left us, I found myself saying. Suddenly, we weren't invited to neighborhood barbecues anymore. My mom worked 3 jobs, but it wasn't just about money. It was like we became invisible. I promised myself I'd never be invisible again. So you made yourself into someone those people would see. He didn't phrase it as a question. The truth of it stung. Yes. And somewhere along the way, I think I forgot who I actually was. Tyler nodded, understanding beyond his years. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the photograph. Her name was Rebecca, he said, the first real personal information he'd volunteered. She overdosed when I was 7. But before that, he traced the edge of the torn image. Before that, she used to point out constellations from our apartment window. Said even when life feels dark, there's always patterns of light if you know how to look. The trust in this small revelation felt monumental. She sounds wise, I said softly. She was sick, he replied. But yeah, sometimes she was really wise. We stood in companionable silence, looking up at the narrow slice of sky visible between Manhattan buildings. I thought about patterns of light in darkness, about the person I'd been and the person I might still become. The following week brought more tests. Vanessa posted a social media story captioned, "When charity becomes a personality trait," with a blurred but recognizable image of Tyler and me leaving the luncheon. My phone filled with texts from our circle, ranging from concerned to outright mocking. I deleted them all. Instead, I focused on Tyler, who was slowly, cautiously unfurling in the safety of consistency. He started bringing home decent grades. He joined the math club at his new school. Small victories that felt enormous. But with each step forward, the distance between my old life and new reality grew. Invitations dwindled. Work colleagues watched me with curiosity, as if waiting for my phase to end. The annual invitation to the Grand Astoria Hotel Charity Gala arrived, the most exclusive event of the year, attended by everyone who mattered in New York society. +1, it specified, as always. In previous years, I'd agonized over the perfect date, someone impressive enough to enhance my social standing. This year, I knew immediately who I wanted beside me. The question was whether it would help or hurt him to enter the lion's den once more. When I hesitantly mentioned the gala, Tyler surprised me. "You should take someone else," he said. "Someone who fits." "And if I think you fit perfectly?" I challenged. His eyes, so much older than his years, studied me. "You don't have to prove anything to me, Madison. But maybe I needed to prove something to myself. What if I want you there?" I asked. "What if I'm tired of caring what those people think?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Then I guess I need a tux." Didn't realize then how that decision would ripple outward, changing lives far beyond our small circle of two. I couldn't have known that the torn photograph in Tyler's pocket was about to shatter more than just Richard Aldridge's champagne glass. All I knew was that for the first time in my adult life, I was choosing integrity over acceptance. And somehow, it felt like coming home. The night of the Grand Astoria Hotel charity gala arrived with an unseasonable downpour. Rain pelted against the windows of the Uber as we rode in silence, Tyler fidgeting with the cuffs of his rented tuxedo, the smallest but most significant detail in the vehicle. The torn photograph, safely tucked into his inner pocket. "You don't have to do this," I told him for perhaps the 10th time. "We can turn around, order pizza, watch terrible movies." Tyler's reflection in the rain-streaked window showed the hint of a smile. "Now you're getting cold feet? After making me learn which fork to use for salad?" His attempt at humor touched me. In the 6 weeks since he'd moved in, these small moments of normalcy had become precious, proof that beneath his protective armor, a thoughtful, sometimes even funny teenager existed. "I just want you to know you have a choice," I said. He turned from the window, his expression suddenly serious. "No one's ever really given me one before. That's why I'm going." The Astoria loomed ahead, its limestone facade illuminated despite the weather, a palace of privilege guarded by attendants with umbrellas ready to shield arriving guests from the rain. Inside, the grandeur was intentionally overwhelming. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, crystal chandeliers that fractured light into 1,000 glittering points. Tyler paused in the doorway, taking it all in. "People actually live like this?" "They don't live here," I explained. "They just spend more on one night here than most people make in a month." His eyes met mine, and I saw understanding dawn. "And that's normal to them." "Yes," I admitted. "And once it was normal to me too." We navigated the cocktail hour, Tyler handling himself with surprising grace despite the stares and whispers. I kept him close, introducing him to the few genuinely kind people in my circle. Artists, writers, the occasional self-made entrepreneur who hadn't forgotten their roots. But I couldn't shield him from everyone. Vanessa spotted us near the champagne fountain, her crimson gown cutting through the crowd like a shark through water, Olivia trailing in her wake. "Madison, you actually brought him." Her smile was razor-sharp as she turned to Tyler. "And in a tux. How transformative." "Thanks," Tyler replied simply, refusing to rise to the bait. "We weren't sure you'd come," Olivia added, her gaze flicking between us. "After that unfortunate social media situation, Vanessa feels just terrible about it, don't you, V?" "Ancient history," Vanessa waved dismissively. "Though I must say, Madison, your little social experiment has everyone fascinated. Is it for work? Some kind of reality show angle?" The casual cruelty stole my breath. "Tyler is not an experiment. He's standing right here," Tyler interrupted quietly, "and has excellent hearing." Something in his calm dignity silenced even Vanessa momentarily. "Ladies, I believe they're announcing dinner," I said, taking Tyler's arm. As we turned away, I whispered, "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he murmured. "I've dealt with worse. At least they're honest about not wanting me around." The comment struck deeper than he knew. How many times? Had I been dishonestly welcoming while privately judging? Had I really changed? Or was I just on the other side of the equation now? Dinner was a masterclass in passive aggression. Our table companions oscillated between ignoring Tyler completely and asking invasive questions about his circumstances. He fielded each interaction with remarkable composure, but I noticed how his hand occasionally slipped to his pocket, checking for the photograph's reassuring presence. During the charity auction, as the wealthy competed to outbid each other for status more than philanthropy, Tyler leaned over. "These people will spend $50,000 on a weekend at someone's beach house but argue over a $2 tip." "How do you know that?" I asked, surprised. I used to bus tables at a place in Chelsea. The biggest bills always left the smallest tips. Another piece of his history, offered voluntarily. I treasured it like the gift it was. After dinner came dancing, the orchestra playing standards that echoed through the ballroom. I noticed Tyler watching the couples with curiosity. "Would you like to dance?" I offered. "I'm not great, but I can manage not to step on your feet." He hesitated. "I don't know how." Perfect time to learn then. I led him to the edge of the dance floor, away from the center of attention. Just a simple box step. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. He followed my lead awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. For a brief moment, he looked like any other teenager, enjoying his first formal dance. The thought that he'd been denied so many normal experiences twisted inside me. "You're a natural," I encouraged. "Liar," he shot back, but he was smiling now, a real smile that reached his eyes. It happened during a turn. Tyler's hand went to his pocket, and his expression suddenly changed to alarm. The photograph had slipped out, floating to the polished floor. He dropped to his knees immediately, reaching for it, but a passing waiter inadvertently kicked it several feet away. "No!" The single word contained such anguish that nearby conversations paused. Tyler scrambled toward the photograph, but the dance floor was crowded, people shifting, threatening to trample the precious image. I moved without thinking, dropping to my own knees in my designer gown, reaching the photograph first and lifting it carefully. Around us, a circle had formed, curious onlookers watching the scene unfold with varying degrees of concern and mockery. "It's okay," I said loudly, rising to my feet and handing the photograph back to Tyler. "It's safe." His hands trembled slightly as he took it, relief washing over his features. Someone in the crowd tittered. Another whispered audibly, "What a production over a piece of trash." Anger flared, hot and unexpected. I turned to face the whispering crowd, my voice carrying further than intended. "This is all he has left of her. This is the woman he still dreams of finding. Some of you might understand if you valued people over appearances." The silence that followed was thick with discomfort. Some guests looked away, embarrassed. Others maintained their expressions of disdain. But one reaction stood out from all others. Richard Aldridge, standing near the bar, had gone deathly pale. The champagne glass in his hand slipped, shattering against the marble floor with a crash that seemed to punctuate my words. He stared at the photograph in Tyler's hands, his expression transforming from shock to recognition to what looked unmistakably like fear. "Oh my God," he whispered, the words somehow carrying across the sudden silence. "I know her." The room froze. Tyler's head snapped up, his eyes locking on Aldridge with sudden intensity. I stood between them, acutely aware that something monumental had just happened, something that would change all our lives. Aldridge recovered first, straightening his posture and signaling to a waiter to clean up the broken glass. "My apologies," he announced to the room at large. Clumsy of me. But his eyes never left Tyler's face, searching it with haunted recognition. The orchestra, sensing the tension, began playing again. Conversations resumed, though now with an electric undercurrent. I placed my hand gently on Tyler's shoulder. "Are you okay?" I asked quietly. He nodded, still staring at Aldridge, who had now turned away to speak, urgently with his assistant. "He knew my mom," Tyler said, his voice a mixture of wonder and suspicion. "How did he know my mom?" Before I could respond, a hand touched my elbow. I turned to find Richard Aldridge's assistant, a thin man with wireframe glasses and a perpetual expression of efficiency. "Ms. Hale," he said smoothly, "Mr. Aldridge would appreciate a private word with both of you." He nodded toward Tyler. "In the library, perhaps? Away from the crowd." I looked at Tyler, letting him decide. After a moment's consideration, he nodded once, his jaw set with determination. We followed the assistant through the main hall and down a corridor lined with portraits of stern-faced men, past benefactors of the hotel, I assumed. The library was small but opulent, walls lined with leather-bound books that looked more decorative than read, a fire crackling in a marble fireplace despite the season. Richard Aldridge stood with his back to us, staring into the flames. At the sound of the door closing, he turned. Up close, I could see the fine tremor in his hands, the sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the room's perfect temperature control. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice steadier than his appearance suggested. "I believe we have matters to discuss, private matters. Tyler stepped forward, holding out the photograph. You knew my mother. It wasn't a question. Aldridge's gaze fixed on the torn image. He reached into his inner pocket and withdrew a matching piece of paper, the missing half of the photograph. When placed together, they formed a complete picture. A younger Richard Aldridge with his arm around Rebecca Brooks, both smiling on what appeared to be a small boat, the Manhattan skyline visible behind them. Yes, Aldridge said quietly. I knew Rebecca very well. Tyler's breath caught audibly. How? Aldridge's eyes moved from the completed photograph to Tyler's face, studying features that suddenly seemed to mirror his own. The same jawline, the same slight arch of the eyebrows. Because, he said after a long pause, I believe I'm your father. The library seemed to contract, the air thinning as those 5 words hung between us. Tyler stood frozen, his face a battlefield of emotions, hope, rage, disbelief, all warring for dominance. No, he finally said, his voice cracking on the single syllable. No way. Aldridge placed both halves of the photograph on a mahogany side table. I understand your shock. I'm rather shocked myself. He straightened his already perfect tie. I knew Rebecca Brooks, 25. 17, Tyler interrupted, fury beginning to win out. I'm 17. 17 years ago, yes, Aldridge corrected, visibly calculating. We were involved for several months. When it ended, I had no idea she was. He paused, clearly uncomfortable. Pregnant? I supplied, stepping closer to Tyler, whose breathing had become rapid and shallow. Yes. Aldridge's gaze returned to Tyler. Had I known? The unfinished sentence hung between them. Would it have made a difference? Would this titan of industry, this married pillar of New York society, have acknowledged a child with a woman he'd, clearly discarded? You're lying, Tyler said flatly. My mom would have told me if my father was... He gestured vaguely at Aldridge's obvious wealth. Aldridge sighed, looking suddenly older. Rebecca had her pride. After we parted ways, she refused any contact. I respected her wishes. How convenient, I couldn't help saying. Tyler's hands had clenched into fists. If you're my father, where were you when she died? Where were you when I went into foster care? Where were you for the past 10 years? Each question landed like a physical blow. Aldridge flinched but maintained his composure. I didn't know, Tyler. I swear to you I didn't know she had passed, or about you. Rebecca and I, our relationship was complicated. When it ended completely. Relationship? Tyler repeated, the word bitter. What kind of relationship? We should return to the gala. Aldridge deflected, glancing at his watch. People will notice our absence, but we should meet, privately. Tomorrow, perhaps. There's much to discuss. Answer him, I interrupted, surprising myself with my firmness. What kind of relationship? Aldridge's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing irritation. Ms. Hale, with all due respect, this is between... No, Tyler cut in. She stays. She's the only person who's been honest with me in years. He stepped closer to Aldridge. What kind of relationship, Mr. Aldridge? Something in the boy's intensity made Aldridge yield. I was married, he admitted. Rebecca was younger. She worked at an art gallery where I was a patron. It was wrong. Of me, I know that now, but you had an affair with my mother and then abandoned her. Tyler translated brutally. And now you're worried I'll tell everyone the great Richard Aldridge has a secret bastard. Aldridge winced at the crude but accurate assessment. Tyler, please. This isn't how I would have chosen for us to meet, but now that we have, I want to make things right. I can help you. Financially, educationally. I don't want your money, Tyler snapped, though his voice wavered slightly. I wanted a father. 17 years ago, I wanted a father. The raw pain in his voice made my throat tighten. Aldridge looked genuinely distressed, but I wondered how much of his concern was for Tyler and how much was for his reputation, his marriage, his empire built on a carefully cultivated image. We need time, I said firmly. This is a lot to process. Aldridge nodded, relieved at my intervention. Of course, but I must ask for your discretion until we've had a chance to speak properly. My wife, my other children, this would devastate them if handled poorly. The implication was clear. Keep quiet or else. Tyler picked up both halves of the photograph. I'm keeping these. Certainly, Aldridge agreed quickly. They're yours by right, but please consider meeting me tomorrow. My office or anywhere you'd feel comfortable. We have 17 years to catch up on. The practiced charm felt hollow against the enormity of what had just been revealed. Tyler said nothing, just turned toward the door. I moved to follow him. Ms. Hale, Aldridge called softly. I paused as Tyler continued out. You seem to care for the boy. Help him understand that impulsive actions now could harm everyone, including him. I can provide for him generously, but discretion is essential. The calculation in his eyes made my skin crawl. He's not looking for a payoff, Mr. Aldridge. He's looking for the truth. Truth is rarely kind, he replied. Sometimes kindness requires careful management of truth. Outside, I found Tyler in the corridor, leaning against a wall, both halves of the photograph clutched in his trembling hands. Tears streaked his face, but he wiped them away quickly when he saw me. I want to leave, he said, his voice steadier than I expected. Now! The ride home was silent, Tyler staring out the window, seemingly beyond words. In the apartment, he went straight to his room, closing the door with quiet finality. I stood in the hallway, uncertain whether to give him space or offer comfort, the boundary between guardian and friend suddenly unclear. Finally, I knocked softly. Tyler, can I come in? After a long pause. Yeah. He sat on the edge of his bed, the now complete photograph placed carefully beside him. His face was composed, but his eyes were red-rimmed. I always imagined meeting him, you know, he said as I sat beside him. Made up all these stories. He was in the military, deployed overseas. He was an astronaut on some secret mission. He was dead, a hero who saved people in a fire. A bitter laugh escaped him. Never thought he'd be some rich asshole who cheated on his wife. I'm sorry, I said, inadequate but sincere. He doesn't want me, Tyler continued. He wants damage control. The accuracy of his assessment impressed me. Probably, I agreed. At first. At first? I chose my words carefully. People can surprise you. Sometimes they start doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, but end up in a better place than they expected. You really believe he could ever see me as more than a problem to solve? I thought about the fear in Aldridge's eyes. Not just fear of scandal, but something deeper. Recognition. Connection. Whether he wanted it or not. I don't know, I admitted. But I do know you deserve the chance to find out, if that's what you want. Tyler was quiet for a long time, smoothing the photograph with gentle fingers. All these years, I thought she was protecting me by not talking about him. Now I'm wondering if she was protecting him. Or maybe both, I suggested. From what little you've told me, she loved you fiercely. She wouldn't have wanted you to feel abandoned. He nodded slowly. I need to think. Of course. Take all the time you need. I stood to leave. For what it's worth, Tyler, finding out Richard Aldridge is your father doesn't change who you are. It just adds information. His eyes met mine, suddenly sharp. It changes everything, Madison. You know it does. Money, power. Suddenly, I'm not just some foster kid people can look through. He stopped abruptly. You're still Tyler, I said firmly. The kid who can solve differential equations in his head, who secretly feeds that stray cat on the fire escape, who has more integrity at 17 than most people develop in a lifetime. Something in my words reached him. His shoulders relaxed slightly. What do I do now? It was the question of a boy, not the defensive young man I'd grown used to. It reminded me of how young he really was, despite his hard-won maturity. You sleep, I suggested gently. Tomorrow's soon enough to decide anything. But as I closed his door, I knew sleep would evade us both. Too much had changed tonight. The secret that could ruin Richard Aldridge's carefully constructed empire was indeed in our hands, but so was the fragile heart of a boy who'd already lost too much. The question wasn't what this secret could do to Aldridge. The question was what keeping it, or revealing it, would do to Tyler. Morning arrived with relentless sunshine. That seemed to mock the turmoil inside our apartment. I found Tyler already awake, nursing a cup of coffee at the kitchen island, the reunited photograph placed carefully before him. He looked up as I entered, dark circles beneath his eyes, evidence of a sleepless night. I want to meet him, he said without preamble. Not at his office, somewhere neutral. I poured myself coffee, buying time to organize my thoughts. Are you sure? No, he admitted, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. But I'll never be sure, and I need answers. His directness impressed me. At 17, he showed more emotional clarity than many adults I knew, including me. Okay, I agreed. I'll arrange it. Contacting Aldridge proved surprisingly easy. His assistant answered my call immediately, as if they'd been waiting. A meeting was scheduled for noon at a private dining room in a discreet midtown restaurant, the kind of place where privacy was guaranteed for the right price. As we prepared to leave, Tyler grew increasingly quiet, lost in thought. In the Uber, he finally spoke. He could just deny it, say I'm lying, making it up for money. He could, I acknowledged. But the photograph proves they knew each other, not that he's my father. Tyler, I said carefully, if you're worried about rejection, I'm not, he interrupted too quickly. I just want to be realistic. The restaurant was elegantly understated, the kind of place that didn't need to advertise its exclusivity. We were escorted through the main dining area to a private room in the back, where Richard Aldridge waited alone, standing as we entered. Today, in daylight, I could see Tyler and him more clearly, or perhaps I was looking for similarities now that I knew. The same determined set of the jaw, the same analytical gaze. Thank you for coming, Aldridge said, gesturing to the table already set with water and bread. No menus. The meal had been predetermined. Please sit. Tyler took the chair, farthest from Aldridge. I sat between them, feeling like a mediator at a high-stakes negotiation. I've been thinking about our conversation, Aldridge began after we were seated, and I want to assure you, Tyler, that I intend to take responsibility. Fully. Tyler's expression remained neutral. What does that mean, exactly? Financial support, of course. The best education, college, graduate, school if you wish, a trust fund, introductions to the right people for whatever career you choose to pursue. Aldridge spoke with the confidence of a man used to solving problems with money. Your future would be secure. In exchange for what? Tyler asked bluntly. Aldridge blinked, momentarily thrown. I don't understand. Yes, you do, Tyler pressed. You're offering to pay me off. What do you want in return? I suppressed a smile at the directness. Aldridge shifted uncomfortably. Not a payoff, Tyler. This is what fathers provide for their children. But yes, there would need to be some parameters around how we proceed. Meaning secrecy, I translated. Aldridge's eyes flicked to me, irritated at my intervention, before returning to Tyler. Discretion would be necessary, at least initially. My wife, my other children, this would come as quite a shock. We would need time to prepare them. How long have you been married? Tyler asked suddenly. 22 years. So you were married when you met my mom? A tight nod. Yes. Did she know that you were married? Aldridge hesitated. Not initially, no. The admission hung in the air between them. I watched Tyler absorb this. Another piece of his mother's story. Another layer of complication. I'd like proof, Tyler said finally. A DNA test. That won't be necessary, Aldridge replied quickly. I acknowledge you as my son. I want proof, Tyler repeated firmly. For me, not for you. Aldridge studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Very well, I can arrange it privately, with complete confidentiality. And if it's positive? Tyler pressed. What then? Secret meetings in back rooms for the rest of my life? Pretending we don't know each other in public? For now, yes, Aldridge admitted. But eventually what? Tyler's voice rose slightly. Eventually you'll tell your real family about your mistake? Eventually I'll be invited to Christmas dinner? Eventually I'll stop being inconvenient? Aldridge's jaw tightened. You're being unreasonable. I'm offering you advantages most people would be grateful for. I'm not most people, Tyler shot back. And I'm not looking for advantages. I wanted a father. But it's 17 years too late for that, isn't it? The pain beneath his anger was palpable. I placed a hand on his arm, feeling the tension there. Perhaps, I suggested carefully, we should focus on what's possible now rather than what was lost. Tyler nodded, visibly collecting himself. Fine. Here's what I want. Acknowledgement. Not money, not secret support. I want you to publicly recognize me as your son. Aldridge paled. That's impossible. The scandal would hurt your image, Tyler finished. Your precious reputation. It would. Hurt more than my reputation, Aldridge countered. My wife, my children. They don't deserve this pain. My company employs thousands of people. The fallout could affect them too. So I should stay hidden. For the greater good. The bitterness in Tyler's voice cut like a knife. Aldridge leaned forward, his tone softening. Tyler, please try to understand my position. I've built a life, a family. I made a mistake with your mother. I wasn't the mistake, Tyler said quietly, dangerously. The mistake was abandoning her. Abandoning us. I didn't know about you. Aldridge insisted. If I had, you'd have what? Stepped up? Done the right thing? Tyler shook his head. I don't believe you. You had a choice then, and you chose your reputation. You're making the same choice now. Aldridge's expression hardened. You're 17. You don't understand the complexities of adult relationships or responsibilities. I understand enough, Tyler replied. I understand that your comfort matters more to you than my existence. The silence that followed was thick with tension. I watched Aldridge struggle, seeing perhaps for the first time the real human cost of his past actions. What if, I suggested, breaking the impasse. There was a middle ground? Not immediate public acknowledgement, but not permanent secrecy either. A transition period. Both turned to me, equally surprised by my intervention. What kind of transition? Aldridge asked cautiously. Time for you to prepare your family, for Tyler to finish high school without media attention, for both of you to actually get to know each other before deciding what kind of relationship you want. Tyler considered this. How long? 6 months, I proposed, during which Tyler receives no financial support beyond covering the DNA test. This isn't about money, it's about truth. At the end of 6 months, if the test confirms paternity, you acknowledge Tyler publicly. On your terms, but completely. Aldridge rubbed his jaw, calculating. A year would be better. Give us time to. 6 months, Tyler insisted. Or I walk out of here and tell my story to the first reporter who'll listen. I have the photograph. I have your reaction at the gala. People will believe me. It wasn't an idle threat. The stubborn set of his jaw, so like Aldridge's own, made that clear. 6 months, Aldridge agreed reluctantly. But during that time, absolute discretion from both of you. And we meet regularly, weekly. If I'm to acknowledge you as my son, Tyler, I want to know who you are. Tyler nodded once, decisively. Deal. But not just meetings with you. I want to know about my mom, too. Everything you remember. She's more than just your mistake. Something shifted in Aldridge's expression, a flash of genuine emotion breaking through the calculated exterior. She was, he agreed softly. She was extraordinary. For the first time, I glimpsed the possibility that this complicated man might actually have loved Rebecca Brooks in his flawed way. Whether that made his abandonment better or worse, I couldn't tell. The rest of the meal passed in awkward conversation. Surface details exchanged, tentative questions asked, and partially answered. Tyler maintained his composure admirably, neither hostile nor eager to please. When we left, Aldridge's handshake was firm, but his eyes were troubled. Outside, as we waited for our ride, Tyler exhaled heavily. 6 months? 6 months, I agreed. Are you okay with this? He shrugged, looking suddenly very young. No, but it's better than nothing, or everything at once. You were impressive in there, I told him. Standing your ground. I learned from watching you, he replied simply, the unexpected compliment warming me. As our car arrived, I realized 2 things with sudden clarity. Tyler had taken a monumental step toward healing his past, and Richard Aldridge had significantly underestimated his son. The next 6 months would transform all our lives in ways none of us could predict. What I couldn't know then was just how soon that transformation would begin, or how completely it would shatter the careful plans we'd just made. The DNA results arrived with clinical efficiency. 99.9998% probability of paternity. Tyler read the report silently, then passed it to me without comment. His face remained carefully neutral, but I noticed his hands trembling. Slightly. It doesn't change anything, I said gently. We already knew. Yeah, he agreed. But now it's official. The weeks that followed took on a strange rhythm. Tyler met with Aldridge every Saturday afternoon, returning with fragmented stories about his mother, how she'd loved obscure jazz, laughed with her whole body, dreamed of opening her own gallery someday. Each piece of information he collected like a precious stone, rebuilding the mosaic of the woman he'd lost too young. Meanwhile, I navigated my own shifting landscape. Work had become increasingly uncomfortable as rumors spread about my charity case and my conspicuous absence from social events. Vanessa and Olivia had all but severed ties, though not before ensuring everyone knew I'd chosen a troubled teen over their valuable friendship. Surprisingly, I found I didn't care. The shallow approval I'd once craved seemed meaningless compared to the genuine connection I was building with Tyler. We weren't just guardian and ward anymore. We were becoming family, bound by choice rather than obligation. He wants me to tour Princeton next week, Tyler mentioned one evening as we prepared dinner. Cooking together had become our ritual, a peaceful interlude where conversation flowed more easily. Says he can arrange a private meeting with the dean of admissions. I chopped vegetables, careful to keep my tone neutral. How do you feel about that? Weird. He stirred the pasta sauce thoughtfully. It's like he's trying to fast forward through getting to know me to planning my future. Have you told him that? Tyler shrugged. He doesn't really listen. Just keeps talking about opportunities and connections and his legacy. He tasted the sauce, adding more basil. Sometimes I think he sees me as a project, not a person. The observation was painfully astute. In our limited interactions, I'd noticed Aldridge's tendency to manage rather than connect, arranging experiences for Tyler rather than sharing them, discussing achievements rather than feelings. You don't have to follow his plan, I reminded him. The agreement was about acknowledgement, not control. I know. Tyler hesitated, then added, he invited me to his house next weekend, to meet his wife, not as his son, as a promising student he's mentoring. I nearly dropped the knife I was holding. That wasn't the agreement. No, he repeated. But he says it's a first step, a way to introduce me gradually. The manipulation was so transparent, it made my teeth ache. And if they connect, if they form a relationship, is he planning to tell her later that he lied about who you are? Tyler's silence answered my question. You deserve better than to be someone's secret, I said firmly. I've been thinking about that. He replied, his voice careful. About what I deserve. About what would actually make things better. Something in his tone made me pause. What do you mean? He turned to face me fully. Maybe public acknowledgement isn't what I need. Maybe what I really need is just to know. To understand who she was, who he is, who I am because of them. And now I have that. I studied his face, trying to read between the lines. Are you saying you're reconsidering the agreement? I'm saying maybe there are different kinds of truth. Maybe forcing him to acknowledge me publicly just hurts more people without helping me. He returned to stirring the sauce. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. His maturity continually surprised me. While I'd been focused on justice, making Aldridge face consequences, Tyler was weighing the true meaning of healing. But events were already in motion that would force all our hands. 3 days later, as I was leaving a client meeting, my phone exploded with notifications. A gossip blog had published a piece titled, Aldridge Family Secret Billionaire's Hidden Love Child, accompanied by a grainy photo of Tyler and Aldridge leaving their most recent meeting. My heart sank as I scanned the article. It was largely speculation, connecting dots without concrete evidence. But the photograph, the torn image of Rebecca and Richard now made whole, featured prominently. Someone had leaked it, along with just enough details to make the story credible. I called Tyler immediately. Where are you? School library. What's wrong? The story's out. About you and Aldridge. It's all over the internet. His sharp intake of breath was the only indication of his shock. How? We were careful. I don't know, I admitted. But we need to get ahead of this. Can you meet me at home? By the time Tyler arrived, Aldridge had already called 3 times, each voicemail more frantic than the last. I played them on speaker. Demand to know if you're behind. This breach. Complete violation of our agreement. My family is devastated. My attorneys will be in touch. Tyler listened with growing stillness, his expression hardening with each accusation. He thinks we did this, he said flatly when the messages ended. Yes. After everything, he still doesn't trust me. It wasn't a question, just a painful realization. Before I could respond, my phone rang again. Aldridge's assistant, requesting our immediate presence at his office. The tone made it clear this wasn't a request, but a summons. We don't have to go, I told Tyler. Yes, we do. His jaw set with determination. I want to hear him accuse me to my face. Aldridge's corporate headquarters occupied the top floors of a gleaming midtown tower. We were escorted directly to his private office by security rather than his usual assistant, a detail that spoke volumes. He stood behind his desk when we entered, his normally impeccable appearance showing signs of strain. Tie slightly askew, hair disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. Explain yourselves, he demanded without preamble. We didn't leak anything, I replied evenly. We've kept our end of the agreement. Then how? He asked through clenched teeth. Did that photograph end up online? How did they know about our meetings? The details are too specific to be coincidence. Tyler stepped forward. You think I did this? After you finally started telling me about my mother? Why would I ruin that? For attention. For money. For revenge. Aldridge's control slipped, revealing the fear beneath. My wife saw the article. My children. Do you have any idea what this has done to them? No, Tyler answered quietly. I don't. Because you never gave them the chance to know me. You were too busy protecting your perfect image. Aldridge slammed his palm on the desk. This isn't about image. It's about family. I'm your family too. Tyler's voice rose to match Aldridge's. Whether you want to admit it or not. The raw emotion in the room was suffocating. I placed a steadying hand on Tyler's shoulder, feeling him trembling with anger and hurt. We didn't leak the story, I repeated firmly. But someone did. The question is, who else knew? Aldridge's expression shifted, calculation replacing anger. Very few people. My assistant. My attorney who drafted the support. Arrangements. Which we never signed, I pointed out, because Tyler refused financial support until after public acknowledgement. And your friends, Tyler added suddenly. Vanessa and Olivia. They saw my photo fall at the gala. They saw your reaction. The possibility hadn't occurred to me, but it made terrible sense. Their social media posts, their continuous attempts to undermine me, their, connections to the gossip circles that fed these kinds of stories. That's absurd, Aldridge dismissed. They have no motive. Don't they? I challenged. Vanessa's husband sits on your board. Olivia's father was passed over for promotion at your firm last year. And they both hate me for choosing Tyler over their social circle. Doubt flickered across Aldridge's face, but his anger quickly resurged. It doesn't matter who leaked it. What matters is fixing this before it destroys everything I've built. You mean everyone thinks you abandoned your pregnant girlfriend and ignored your son for 17 years? Tyler's voice was dangerously calm. That's not a leak. That's the truth. Aldridge's facade cracked completely. You don't understand what's at stake. My company is in the middle of a major acquisition. My oldest daughter is getting married next month. My reputation, your reputation, Tyler interrupted, is built on lies. Maybe it deserves to be destroyed. The words hung in the air between them, a challenge and a judgment. Aldridge stared at his son, truly seeing him perhaps for the first time. Get out, he said finally, his voice cold. Both of you. My attorneys will handle this from now on. As we turned to leave, Tyler paused at the door. You know what's sad? I was actually starting to think you might care about me, not as your mistake or your project, as your son. For a moment, something like regret flashed in Aldridge's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the practiced mask of the successful businessman. That was your mistake, he said, simply. Outside, in the gleaming lobby, Tyler maintained his composure until we reached the street. Then he stopped abruptly, his breath coming in short gasps. Hey, I said softly, guiding him to a nearby bench. Breathe. Just breathe. He never cared. Tyler managed between breaths. It was always about control, about his image. I'm sorry, I said, inadequate but sincere. Don't be. He straightened, wiping his eyes fiercely. This is better. Now I know. No more lies. No more pretending. As we sat there, my phone buzzed with a text. An unknown number, but the message made the sender clear. This isn't over. You've made a powerful enemy today. V. I showed it to Tyler, confirming our suspicions about the leak. His laugh was hollow. Guess your friends aren't done with us yet. They never were my friends, I replied, finally accepting the truth I'd known for years. And they have no idea who they're dealing with. Because in that moment, watching Tyler pull himself together with quiet dignity despite the pain inflicted on him, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would do whatever it took to protect him, not just from Aldridge's rejection or Vanessa's petty revenge, but from a world that too often dismissed people like him as unimportant. The story had been leaked. Yes, but the real truth was still ours to tell. The next 48 hours unfolded like a fever dream. News vans camped outside my apartment building. Reporters ambushed us on the sidewalk, thrusting microphones into our faces. My phone overflowed with messages from former colleagues and acquaintances, their sudden concern transparent in its opportunism. This is insane, Tyler muttered as we watched yet another news segment speculating about the Aldridge Air scandal from the safety of our living room. They're talking about us like we're characters in a soap opera. Welcome to New York society's version of entertainment, I replied, muting the television. Nothing gets ratings like watching the mighty fall. Richard Aldridge's PR team had gone into overdrive, releasing a carefully worded statement, neither confirming nor denying the allegations, but emphasizing his commitment to addressing personal matters privately, with respect for all involved. It was masterful in its emptiness, saying nothing while appearing forthright. I'd received 3 calls from his attorneys, each more threatening than the last. The final one had been explicit. If we spoke to the press, they would pursue all available legal remedies. They're scared, I told Tyler after relaying the latest threat, which means we have power here. He looked up from his laptop, where he'd been avoiding homework in favor of reading every article about the scandal. What kind of power? The truth, I said simply. Your truth, which you can choose to share or keep private. He was quiet for a long moment. What would you do? If you were me? I considered carefully. I'd probably want to burn it all down, make him hurt the way he hurt you. I met his eyes. But that's not always the wisest course. No, he agreed. It's not. His maturity continued to astonish me. While the adults around him scrambled for damage control, Tyler remained thoughtful, processing rather than reacting. My own life was unraveling in parallel. My boss had called that morning, his message clear beneath the corporate doublespeak: either distance myself from the scandal or find another job. The client I'd been courting for months had canceled our contract. Olivia had sent a group text to our entire social circle with just 2 words. Told you. Strangely, none of it hurt as much as it should have. The world I'd fought so hard to belong to was revealing its true nature, and I found I no longer wanted membership. I've been invited to do an interview, Tyler announced suddenly. Exclusive, major network, they're offering a lot of money. My heart skipped. Who contacted you? Someone messaged. Me on Instagram, said they're a producer. Alarm bells rang. Tyler, that could be anyone. Tabloids, Aldridge's people trying to trap you, even Vanessa playing games. He nodded. I know. I didn't respond. He closed his laptop. But it got me thinking, what if I did tell my story? My way? What would that look like? Not a tell-all, not revenge. He spoke slowly, working through his thoughts. Just the truth, about growing up in the system, about how many kids like me never find families, about how money and power let people like Aldridge walk away from their responsibilities. The idea had merit. If handled correctly, it could shift the narrative from sensationalism to substance. But the risks remained enormous. Aldridge would fight back, I warned. Hard. He has resources we can't imagine. I know. Tyler's expression hardened. But maybe this isn't just about me anymore. Maybe it's about all the kids who don't have anyone fighting for them. Before I could respond, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it until Tyler gestured for me to answer and put it on speaker. Madison Hale, I answered cautiously. Ms. Hale, this is Catherine Aldridge. The room seemed to still. Richard Aldridge's wife, the betrayed spouse, the woman whose perfect life had been upended by the revelation of her husband's long-ago infidelity. Mrs. Aldridge, I replied, struggling to keep my voice neutral. How did you get this number? That's hardly important. Her voice was calm, controlled, revealing nothing. I'd like to meet with you and the boy. Today, if possible. Tyler's eyes widened. I covered the microphone. Your call, I whispered to him. He hesitated only briefly before nodding. We can meet, I told her, but not at your home or office. Certainly not, she agreed, as if the suggestion were absurd. There's a private room at the Morgan Library. 4 o'clock, come through the side entrance. Someone will meet you. The call ended as abruptly as it had begun. Are you sure about this? I asked Tyler. She could be setting us up. For what? He countered. The story's already out, and I'm curious, aren't you? The Morgan Library's side entrance was discreet, as promised. A security guard escorted us through empty corridors to a small reading room where Catherine Aldridge waited alone, elegant in understated gray cashmere, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple knot. She stood as we entered, her gaze going immediately to Tyler, studying him with undisguised intensity. Whatever she saw made her inhale sharply. You have his eyes, she said simply. And his father's chin. Richard's father, I mean. Tyler stiffened beside me, clearly not expecting this direct acknowledgement. Thank you for coming, she continued, gesturing to the chairs arranged around a small table. Please sit. We did, the atmosphere thick with unasked questions. Catherine appeared in no hurry to explain herself, pouring tea from a waiting service with practiced grace. My husband doesn't know I'm here, she said finally. He thinks I'm at a committee meeting. Why are you here, Mrs. Aldridge? I asked directly. She set down her teacup precisely. To see for myself, to understand what I'm dealing with. Her gaze returned to Tyler. And to meet my husband's son. The bluntness was startling. No prevarication, no denial. You believe I'm his son? Tyler asked, his voice carefully neutral. The photograph makes it rather obvious, she replied. Richard had it in his desk for years. I found it once, long ago. He claimed she was just someone from the gallery, but I knew. She smiled thinly. Wives usually do. The revelation hung between us. She'd known about Rebecca, perhaps even suspected a child, and stayed silent all these years. What do you want from us? I asked, protective instincts flaring. Direct. Good. She approved with a slight nod. What I want is simple. Dignity. For everyone involved. She turned to Tyler. Including you. I don't understand, he admitted. My husband is prepared to offer a very generous settlement, complete financial support, education, connections when you're ready to enter the professional world, in exchange for your discretion. He already tried that, Tyler responded, disappointment evident in his voice. I'm not interested in being paid to disappear. Not disappear, she corrected. Simply proceed with appropriate boundaries. No public claims, no media circus. A private relationship, should you both wish it. I studied her carefully. Unlike her husband, whose every word had screamed self-protection, Catherine Aldridge seemed genuinely concerned with finding a workable solution. Why are you doing this? I asked. He betrayed you. 20 years ago, she said dismissively, and I'm not here to salvage his reputation or even our marriage. Something hard flashed in her eyes. I'm here for my children. They don't deserve to have their father's mistakes splashed across every screen in America. Tyler leaned forward. Neither did I. But that's exactly what happened to me. Catherine didn't flinch. You're right, and that's inexcusable. Which is why I'm offering a different approach than my husband's. She reached into her handbag and withdrew a folder. This is my proposal, not Richard's, mine. Inside was a document outlining financial provisions similar to what Aldridge had offered, but with key differences. The money would come from Catherine's personal trust, not Richard's accounts. There would be no confidentiality clause, only a request for mutual respect and discretion. Most surprisingly, there was a handwritten note at the bottom. I would like the opportunity to know you should you be willing. Your half-siblings deserve the chance as well when they're ready. Tyler read it twice, his expression unreadable. You'd acknowledge me? Even to your children? They're adults, not infants, Catherine replied. They can handle difficult truths. And yes, in time, I believe they should know their brother. She sipped her tea. Richard disagrees, vehemently, but he's not thinking clearly at the moment. This is unexpected, I admitted. I'm a practical woman, Ms. Hale. The truth exists whether we acknowledge it or not. I prefer to deal with reality. Tyler set down the folder. What if I want public? Acknowledgement from him? Not just private recognition? Catherine studied him thoughtfully. May I ask why that's important to you? Because, Tyler paused, considering. Because he should have to face what he did. Running away from responsibility. Abandoning my mom. Pretending I didn't exist. And if he did acknowledge you publicly, she pressed, would that heal those wounds? Would it bring your mother back? Would it give you the childhood you deserved? The questions weren't cruel, but they cut deep. Tyler's silence was answer enough. Revenge rarely brings the satisfaction we imagine, she said gently. Believe me, I've considered it myself over the years. This isn't about revenge, Tyler insisted, though with less certainty than before. Isn't it? At least partly? Catherine leaned forward. I'm not judging you. You have every right to your anger, but ask yourself what you truly want from this situation. Status? Money? A relationship with your father? Or simply for your existence to be recognized? The room fell silent as Tyler wrestled with questions no 17-year-old should have to face. I watched him, wishing I could shield him from this burden, but knowing he needed to find his own answers. I want my dignity, he said finally. I don't want to be anyone's dirty secret or public scandal. I just want, he struggled to articulate it. I want to matter. You already do, Catherine said with surprising warmth. To her, she nodded toward me. And perhaps in time, to others in our family as well. She rose gracefully, signaling the end of our meeting. Take some time to consider my proposal. It's not a demand or an ultimatum. It's an invitation to find a path forward that preserves everyone's dignity. As we prepared to leave, she addressed Tyler directly one last time. Whatever you decide, know this. Your mother must have been remarkable. Richard has many flaws, but he's never been attracted to ordinary women. It was the most genuine thing anyone had said about Rebecca since this began. Tyler nodded once, unable to speak past the emotion in his throat. Outside, as we walked through the fading afternoon light, Tyler remained lost in thought. Finally, he turned to me. "What would you do?" he asked again. This time, I answered differently. I'd choose my peace over their discomfort, my future over their past, and my dignity over any revenge. He nodded slowly, decision forming in his eyes. Then that's what I'll do too. I couldn't know then how powerful that choice would prove to be, or how it would transform not just Tyler's life, but all of ours, in ways none of us could have predicted. 6 months after the scandal broke, I stood at the back of an auditorium at Columbia University, watching Tyler adjust his tie nervously, before stepping onto the stage. The crowd, a mix of students, faculty, and social workers, applauded as he approached the podium. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. When I was asked to speak about my experience in the foster care system, my first instinct was to say no, not because I'm ashamed of my past, but because I'm still figuring out how it fits into my future. The audience laughed appreciatively, warming to his authenticity. I smiled, remembering how much he'd practiced this speech, determined to get it right. For those who don't know me, and that's probably most of you, my name is Tyler Brooks. I spent 10 years in foster care after losing my mother. I moved 7 times, attended 12 different schools, and carried exactly one possession with me through all of it, a torn photograph of my mom. He paused, allowing the weight of those facts to settle. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that the missing half of that photograph would one day reconnect me not just to my past, but to a future I never thought possible. The audience was rapt now, drawn in by the understated emotion in his voice. In the front row, Catherine Aldridge sat straight-backed but attentive, her support quiet but unwavering. Beside her, to my continued surprise, was Richard Aldridge himself, his expression a complex mix of discomfort and something that might have been pride. Their presence today had been uncertain until the last minute. The months since our meeting with Catherine had seen gradual, careful steps toward an unconventional family arrangement. There had been private dinners, awkward but increasingly genuine. There had been long conversations about Rebecca, about the years Tyler had lost, about possibilities for the future. Richard had struggled the most, trapped between shame over his past actions and fear of public judgment. But Catherine, with her practical wisdom and unwavering moral compass, had guided them all towards something resembling healing. "The statistics about foster youth are grim," Tyler continued, shifting to the formal portion of his speech. "Only about 3% of us graduate from college. More than 20% become homeless after aging out of the system. We're more likely to be incarcerated than to find permanent families." He looked up from his notes, scanning the audience. "But those aren't just numbers. They're kids like I was. Kids who need someone to see them as more than their circumstances." In the months following the scandal, Tyler had made a decision that surprised everyone. He would not pursue public acknowledgement from Richard, nor would he accept the financial settlement Catherine had offered. Instead, he asked for their help establishing a foundation for foster youth transitioning to adulthood. The Brooks Foundation, he'd named it, honoring his mother rather than claiming the Aldridge name. Its mission was simple but profound: to provide mentorship, housing support, and educational opportunities to young adults aging out of foster care. Richard's initial reluctance had gradually transformed into genuine commitment as he recognized an opportunity for redemption. He provided the initial funding but remained in the background, allowing Tyler and Catherine to become the public faces of the foundation. His support was private but substantial, not just financially but in opening doors that would otherwise have remained closed. "What changed my path wasn't money or connections," Tyler told the audience now. "It was having someone who believed I mattered." He found me in the crowd, his smile genuine. Someone who was willing to risk her own social standing to give me a chance. My throat tightened with emotion. The past months had transformed us both. I'd left my PR firm to become the foundation's communications director, using my skills for something meaningful rather than superficial. The invitations to elite gatherings had stopped. replaced by connections with people doing real work in the community. Vanessa and Olivia had moved on to other targets once they realized their attempt to destroy me had instead liberated me from caring about their approval. Their final attempt at retaliation, leaking that I'd been fired rather than resigned from my firm, had fallen flat when I publicly thanked them for helping me find my true purpose. Today, I'm announcing that the Brooks Foundation is launching a pilot program providing full scholarships to 10 foster youth, Tyler continued, his confidence growing with each word. These scholarships include not just tuition, but housing, mentorship, and professional development. The applause was genuine, especially from the social workers who understood the transformative potential of such support. This is just the beginning, Tyler promised, because every child deserves to be seen. Every child deserves a chance, and every child deserves to know that their past doesn't have to define their future. As he finished his speech to a standing ovation, I watched Richard Aldridge rise slowly to his feet, genuine emotion breaking through his carefully maintained facade. Their eyes met across the distance. Father and son, their relationship complicated but real. Not the dramatic public acknowledgement Tyler had once demanded, but something more meaningful: respect. After the event, as people mingled in the reception area, I found myself face to face with Richard for the first time in months. He was impressive today, he said, nodding toward Tyler, who was speaking animatedly with a group of social work students. He always has been, I replied. You just needed to see it. Richard accepted the gentle rebuke with a nod. Catherine says I should thank you for protecting him when I wouldn't do it myself, for giving him stability when he needed it most. I didn't do it for thanks, I said honestly. I know. He studied me with new respect. You did it because it was right. Because you saw his value when the rest of us were blinded by our own concerns. He hesitated. I've never been good at admitting mistakes, Madison, but I was wrong about many things, including you. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Richard Aldridge, it was significant. I accepted it with a nod. He's changing lives, I said, shifting the focus back to Tyler, including mine. And mine, Richard admitted quietly, more than he knows. Across the room, Catherine was introducing Tyler to the Dean of Social Work, their body language comfortable, almost familial. The sight warmed me, this unlikely connection forged from pain and betrayal, but blossoming into something healing. Later that night, Tyler and I walked home through the early autumn evening, the air crisp with possibility. He'd moved into a dorm at Columbia 3 weeks earlier, starting his freshman year with a confidence I could never have imagined when I first met the wary, defensive boy clutching a torn photograph. I saw you talking to Richard, he said as we waited for a traffic light. Anything interesting? Just mutual appreciation for how amazing you were today, I replied. He grinned, embarrassed but pleased. It was okay. It was perfect, I assured him. You're a natural. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, passing familiar landmarks in a neighborhood that had become home to both of us. I've been thinking, he said finally, about what happens next year when your guardianship officially ends. My heart skipped. I'd been avoiding this conversation, afraid of pressuring him as he built his new life. We don't have to figure that out now, I started. I already have, he interrupted. I want to stay with you. Not because I need a guardian anymore, but because, he searched for the right words. Because you're family. The family I chose. The family who chose me. Tears sprang to my eyes. Unexpected but welcome. I'd like that very much. Good, he said decisively. Because I already told Catherine and she thinks it makes perfect sense. I laughed, wiping my eyes. Does she now? She says families come in all forms. That it's not about blood or legal documents. It's about who shows up when it matters. Catherine's wisdom continued to surprise me. From unlikely ally to genuine friend, she'd become an essential part of our unconventional family circle. As we approached our apartment building, Tyler paused, looking up at the narrow slice of sky visible between the buildings. Following his gaze, I spotted a few early stars emerging against the deepening blue. Remember what I told you about my mom? He asked softly. How she said even when life feels dark, there are always patterns of light if you know how to look. I remember, I said. I think I understand now what she meant. His voice was thoughtful. It wasn't just about stars. It was about finding meaning in the darkness, finding connections that guide you home. I thought about all we'd been through, the scandal, the pain, the difficult choices, And then about where we'd landed. Tyler thriving in college, the foundation changing lives, new relationships formed from the ashes of betrayal. Patterns of light, indeed. Your mother would be proud of you, I told him. So proud. I think she would, he agreed. And I think she'd be glad I found you. He turned to me with a smile that held no trace of the defensive boy I'd first met. That we found each other. As we entered the building, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us here. How my so-called elite friends had sneered when I fostered a troubled teen, warning he would stain our image. How his only possession, a torn photograph of his birth mother, had revealed a truth powerful enough to shatter a millionaire empire. But the real story wasn't in the scandal or the secrets. It was in what happened after. How truth, handled with dignity rather than vengeance, had healed wounds I hadn't even known existed. How choosing integrity over image had led me to a life richer than I could have imagined. True wealth, I now understood, isn't measured by reputation or millions in the bank. It's measured by the courage to love when the world tells you not to, and by standing beside those who have no one else, by recognizing patterns of light in the darkness and following them home.